Story 1. The client who wanted silence. He paid me to say nothing. But silence has a way of answering back. The suite was too quiet for that hour of night. 2:40 a.m., city lights below like a pulse under glass. He'd asked for silence, paid double for it, so I shut the door and let the click sound louder than it should. The curtains were half drawn, the air heavy with perfume that didn't belong to either of us. I've done stranger things for money, but never one that started this still. He stood by the window, shirt undone but precise about it, like he rehearsed the pose. When I stepped closer, our shoulders almost touched, just the fabric between us. His scent was clean, new, the kind that lingers more in memory than in air. The light caught his mouth for a moment, drawing a line I shouldn't have followed. He handed me the headphones, smiling. "For realism," he said. I adjusted the collar of his shirt before taking them. My fingers brushed the fabric, warm, deliberate, too brief to be a mistake. He didn't move, just watched. The headphones felt heavier than they should, matte and expensive, no sound waiting inside them. I slipped them over my ears, the world shrinking to the slow rhythm of his breath. He leaned close enough for his voice to land on my skin instead of my ear. "Don't speak," he whispered. Each word carried heat, as if the sentence itself exhaled. Through the silence, I heard him move, bare feet on carpet, the soft shift of air displaced by a body nearby. Then something else, almost like breathing but slower. Not his. Not mine. At first I thought it was feedback. A faint hiss curling at the edge of the silence. Then it shaped itself, shallow, uneven. Breathing. I lifted one side of the headphones, the sound vanished. Put it back, and there it was again, close enough to fog the inside of my skull. The client was across the room now, perfectly still, watching me watch nothing. Under the table, our knees met, accidental at first, then unmoving. He didn't react. Neither did I. The breath inside the headphones grew steadier, almost syncing with my own. I told myself it was the mic, a trick of isolation. Yet every inhale carried warmth, and a whisper I couldn't decode, pressed right against my eardrum, like someone waiting to be let out. He moved behind me. I felt it before I saw it, the temperature shifting, the faint tremor of floorboards beneath careful steps. A strand of my hair brushed my cheek, and before I could fix it, his hand did. Fingers grazing skin for a fraction too long, as if tracing static. The air between us thickened, humming with something unsaid. We stayed like that. The room held its breath with us. Even the city noise below had drained away. I could hear only the soft rise and fall of air, his, mine, and the other. The headphones were still on, but they no longer felt external. Each breath I heard seemed to fill my lungs first, then his. When he finally spoke, the sound didn't come from his mouth. The whisper threaded through the silence. My name. Spoken softly, perfectly, though I'd never told him. The voice came from inside the headphones, but the timbre was wrong, younger somehow. I pulled them off, heart kicking hard against the quiet. The client didn't move. His reflection in the glass stared straight ahead, mouth closed, breathing steady, too steady. When he finally stepped forward, the warmth he left behind stayed clinging to my skin. The faint scent of his cologne lingered there, sharp and wrong now. I set the headphones on the table. They vibrated once, a low hum that formed words under the noise, my own voice whispering things I'd never said out loud. "Would you have listened?" it asked. He leaned in close again, near enough that the warmth of his breath trembled against my neck. "Put them back on," he murmured, but the sound arrived from behind me, not beside. I turned. The space was empty, yet the whisper lingered, thin and deliberate. His body was still by the window, eyes open, expression soft as if asleep with purpose. Later, security footage showed only one person in the suite. Me, seated, headphones on, unmoving for 47 minutes. I remember less. Just the heat against my throat, the echo that kept repeating long after I'd left the room. It followed me home, nested in silence. Sometimes, when the world goes still enough, I hear it again, my own voice asking if I'd listen this time. Story 2. Room service at 3 a.m. They said the suite was booked for 1. But the tray was set for 2, and someone kept breathing where no one stood. It was 3:07 a.m. when the elevator side opened on the 32nd floor. The hallway smelled like polish and old champagne. I'd done hotel calls before, but something about that hour, too late for pleasure, too early for guilt, made me check my reflection twice in the chrome panel. The tray in my hands held a bottle, 2 glasses, and strawberries under a dome. He'd asked for company in silence. When he opened the door, he looked past me first. Not at my face, past my shoulder as if checking for someone else. The suite was dim, lamps on half-light, curtains drawn tight against the skyline. There was a table set for 2. The chair across from his was turned slightly, waiting. He gestured toward it with a flicker of a smile. "They like to watch," he said softly. The words brushed my ear like breath, and for a second, I thought I smelled perfume that wasn't mine. He poured the champagne himself, slow enough that the bubbles sounded like whispering. The first glass went to the empty chair. I reached to adjust his collar, a polite reflex, and my fingers brushed the fabric, warm from his skin. Just a second too long. His pulse fluttered under the edge of my thumb before I drew back. He didn't look at me. He looked at the glass that wasn't being held. "She's shy tonight," he murmured. His voice came close, closer than it needed to be. The sentence ended inside my ear, hot and deliberate. Felt it more than heard it. Then a faint tap against the silver dome, soft, rhythmic, like fingernails testing the metal from underneath. I told myself it was cooling air. Still, the dome vibrated again, once like a heartbeat pretending not to exist. He lifted the dome. The strawberries were untouched, but the air underneath carried something else. A hint of perfume, faint and floral, the kind that lingers on skin, not in the room. He smiled at the empty chair again. "See? She's already here." I wanted to laugh, but the sound caught somewhere between my ribs. The curtains shifted without wind, fabric sighing as though something invisible had brushed past them. He invited me to sit. I did, careful, knees almost touching his under the table. The contact felt accidental until he didn't move. The warmth stayed steady, deliberate. Then his eyes darted to the chair again, wide and pleading. "Don't make her jealous," he whispered. The glass beside the chair trembled once, then stopped. When I looked closer, a smear appeared on the rim, the shape of lips, glossy, red, and fresh. I tried to stand, but he caught my wrist lightly, not forceful, just enough to still me. "Stay a minute," he said. His fingers trembled against my skin, then released. A strand of my hair slipped forward. He brushed it back, careful, reverent almost. The air between us felt heavier after that, like the room itself had been holding its breath. For a moment, I thought I heard another one, softer, synchronized with mine, right behind my shoulder. We sat in that quiet too long. The kind that starts to sound alive. I could hear the clock, the hum of the minibar, and the faint hiss of carbonation from the bottle. But beneath all that, a rhythm that matched our breathing, just a beat late, as if echoing from someone unseen. He smiled again, eyes unfocused. "She likes when it's quiet," he said. The lights flickered once, approvingly. I told him my time was up. He nodded, but his eyes didn't follow me. They tracked something moving behind me. "Please," he said, almost breaking, "don't turn your back, she hates that." I froze halfway to the door. The room temperature seemed to drop in one breath. The champagne glasses rattled softly against each other like teeth. I felt a stir of air at the nape of my neck, a slow exhale that wasn't mine. I turned anyway. The silver tray was still on the table, catching the dim light. 3 shapes shimmered in it, one seated, one standing, and one leaning too close behind me. I couldn't see a face, only the distortion of breath fogging the polished surface. The air smelled faintly of skin and fresh perfume. My own reflection looked frightened, but not alone. The warmth on my wrist pulsed again, someone's hand or memory pretending to be one. I don't remember moving, but suddenly the client was beside me, whispering close enough that the words brushed my ear. "Don't look away," he said. His breath trembled, desperate. Then another voice, a whisper identical to his, came from behind me, finishing the same sentence in unison. The room seemed to fold in on itself, reflections overlapping, edges uncertain. My throat went dry, but my thoughts stayed clear enough to wonder, would you look at the reflection? The light steadied. Only one glass stood half empty. The other was spotless, waiting. I left the tray on the table and walked backward to the door, afraid to blink, afraid to see less. The hall outside smelled clean, almost sterile. When I came back the next day to return a misplaced earring, there was an envelope on the nightstand, 2 names written in the same hand, a small tip inside, and the faint scent of perfume still breathing through the paper. Story 3. The passenger who knew his route. 1 a.m. on an empty highway. He hummed along to my playlist before I turned it on. He booked it as a driving date. 1 a.m., off-season, empty lanes cutting through the industrial edge of town. I should have said no. But his voice on the phone had that slow warmth, controlled, polite, just enough pause to sound safe. The kind of tone that makes you forget the time. He asked for a quiet route, no stops. I said fine. I drive, we talk, nothing else. Simple rules, always simple. When he stepped into the car, the air changed. Clean suit, faint cologne. The same note I usually wear for clients, not the one I chose tonight. Our shoulders almost brushed as he buckled in. The console light drew a thin glow across his mouth. He smiled without looking at me. Said my playlist suited the mood, though I hadn't hit play yet. He started talking like he already knew me. Word for word, the phrases I'd written in my online ad months ago. Not paraphrased, quoted. The way he said time, discretion, and warmth made my stomach tighten. That tagline hadn't been used since I took it down. I adjusted the collar of his jacket as an excuse to break eye contact. My fingers brushed the fabric, warm from his skin, long enough to not feel accidental. He leaned closer as I pulled onto the highway. "You smell different tonight," he said, soft, almost to himself. "Not jasmine, something sharper." His breath grazed my ear on the last word, too near, too certain. I kept my eyes on the yellow lines and let the silence stretch. The only sound was his low humming, matching the rhythm of my playlist before I'd even turned it on. I kept driving, pretending not to notice the pattern. Each turn, each street he named came before I reached it. Like he'd memorized my route, or mapped it himself. He asked if I still lived above the coffee place with the yellow awning. My throat went dry. That wasn't in any ad. I laughed it off, said he must have confused me with someone else. He just smiled, slow, patient, as if waiting for me to remember something I hadn't lived yet. At a red light, the car idled longer than usual. His knee touched mine, light, deliberate. It didn't move when the light turned green. The scent of his cologne mingled with my perfume until I couldn't tell them apart. "You wore this last week," he murmured, eyes half closed. "At home." The way he said home made the word feel smaller. I didn't ask how he knew. I just drove faster. He watched me more than the road. The dash lights caught his eyes in short flashes, like tiny pulses of red. "You don't remember, do you?" he asked. His voice wasn't accusing, just curious. I brushed a loose strand of hair from my cheek. His hand moved first, fingers grazing mine before I could pull away. The skin beneath his touch tightened, then stayed still, waiting for another mistake. Silence filled the cabin, thick and listening. The hum of the tires softened until even the night outside seemed to pause. We sat there, 2 breaths sinking by accident, or design. The car's display flickered, caught between stations as if it too didn't want to speak. I could feel the heat of him beside me, steady and patient. The kind that feels like memory instead of warmth. I slowed near the overlook, the one that faces the river and nothing else. The moonlight cut across the windshield, catching the edge of the key fob in the console. I kept it close when I work, Habit, security, maybe superstition. He reached for it, rolling it in his palm like he recognized the weight. "You never changed the batteries," he said quietly. "That's why the signal drops near your building." My pulse thudded once, then twice before I remembered to breathe. When I turned to look at him, he'd already leaned back, gaze steady. "You trust machines too much," he added. His tone was calm, but something in it knew I wouldn't argue. He let the fob fall between us. It clicked against my leg, warm from his hand. The spot burned even after I brushed it away. That same faint scent lingered, the one I'd worn last week at home, the one I hadn't worn tonight. The GPS blinked awake on its own. A soft voice announced a route I hadn't entered. Destination, my apartment. He didn't react, just watched the road ahead as if it were already decided. Then he leaned close enough that I felt his breath trace the edge of my ear. "You told me to take you home," he whispered. I turned toward him, but his voice came again, this time from the back seat where no one sat. I froze. The key fob in my hand pulsed once, lights flashing like a heartbeat. On his phone screen, a missed call glowed. My number, dated tomorrow. The engine hummed, waiting for a command I couldn't give. Outside, the night pressed against the glass, listening. I don't remember deciding to shift into drive. Maybe he did. Maybe we both did. Would you keep driving? Story 4. The Mirror Appointment. Midnight. Executive suite. One man watches. The other moves. But in the mirror, the movement comes a second too late. Midnight in a suite that cost more than my month's rent. The city below looked asleep, but its reflection pulsed in the glass walls like a second heartbeat. He was already there, sitting across from the mirror that reached floor to ceiling. He didn't stand when I entered. Didn't even look at me, just said softly, "You'll stand here." The way he said "here" felt mapped, like he had rehearsed that exact word against the echo of the room. I took my place behind him, a few feet from the mirror. Our shoulders nearly lined up in the reflection. The lighting was dim, amber, deliberate. He still hadn't looked directly at me. I caught the faint trace of his fresh cologne, clean, almost metallic, and the way the light drew the line of his mouth in the mirror. For a moment we breathed in rhythm. Then his image blinked once. And mine didn't. I thought it was a trick of light. Reflections do that when you stare too long. But then he said, "Adjust the collar." The tone was polite, rehearsed again like the line of a script. I moved closer, fingers brushing the fabric of his shirt, feeling the warmth trapped beneath the thin cotton. My reflection followed, late by half a breath. When I stepped back, its hand stayed lifted a second longer, hovering near the mirrored throat. "You can speak," he murmured. The sound came from his reflection, not from his real mouth. I watched him through the glass. His lips didn't move. When I answered, the voice that returned was my own, bent low, too close. "No, it's..." Breath slid into my ear, warm and careful, the words curling there before fading. I froze, pulse tightening, afraid to check which side of the mirror had spoken first. The silence afterward was thick enough to lean on. I tried to focus on the carpet pattern, the faint hum of air conditioning, anything normal. But the mirror kept breathing with us. Each exhale fogged a soft bloom of heat on the glass, as if someone on the other side was matching me, breath for breath. He didn't move. The man in the chair sat perfectly still, eyes down. Only the reflection watched me, steady and awake. I shifted, pretending to check my posture. My knee brushed his beneath the table, light, accidental, but it didn't retreat. The air changed temperature. He inhaled sharply, and for the first time his reflection smiled, small and off-tempo. I felt the echo of that smile in my chest like static. Then the mirror trembled, not cracked, not broken, just shivered, and the warmth along the glass grew stronger, too human to ignore. I bent slightly, pretending to fix the crease in his sleeve. A strand of hair had fallen across his cheek. I brushed it back. The gesture was small, practiced, nothing new to me, yet the skin beneath my fingers shivered like I'd touched a live wire. In the mirror, my hand lingered too long. The reflection's eyes met mine, not his. Its pupils tightened, adjusting to a light that didn't exist. Then quiet, that full, waiting quiet where even air feels like it's listening. We stood close enough that I could sense his pulse without touching him. The mirror framed us as if we were posing for something neither of us had agreed to. The city lights pulsed behind the glass, but only the reflection. Moved, breathing with intent, shoulders rising in rhythm with a will of its own. I didn't know which version of me it watched. "You can stop now," he said. But I couldn't tell who had spoken, the man or the image. My reflection's mouth had already formed the words before his voice reached me. I stepped closer to the mirror, drawn by that impossible delay. The surface shimmered faintly, fogging again when I breathed out. It felt warm beneath my fingertips, softer than glass, like skin warmed from the inside. Behind me his chair creaked, but he hadn't moved. I told myself to leave. I even turned halfway toward the door. Yet something clung to me, a trace of his scent on my wrist, a heat that didn't fade. When I looked back, the mirror held only one of us. The reflection tilted its head, mirroring a thought I hadn't had yet. Its hand pressed flat against the inside of the glass, right where my pulse beat. I didn't raise mine, but the warmth spread anyway, up through my arm. The reflection leaned forward before I did. Its breath touched my ear, low, deliberate, a murmur that belonged to both of us. I turned slightly, expecting the man in the chair to move, to confirm the trick. But he sat frozen, eyes half closed, hands folded neatly in his lap. The whisper came again from behind the mirror this time, soft enough to almost believe it was memory. My throat tightened. I couldn't tell which side I was standing on anymore. Then it smiled, slow, certain, out of rhythm. The man himself never did. Light from the city traced the edge of his still face while his reflection's mouth finished a word I hadn't spoken. The glass cooled beneath my skin, but the warmth stayed inside me, shaped like a handprint. I left without looking away, afraid to see if it would follow. Would you meet your own gaze? Story 5. The client in the corridor. At 4 a.m., the motel hallway looked endless. But she stood at both ends, smiling the same way, whispering my name like she'd never stopped. It was 4:03 a.m. when the hallway light flickered for the first time. The carpet smelled faintly of bleach and perfume, like every motel that hides more stories than guests. I just left her room. She said she needed a minute alone. I said fine, I'd grab a soda, clear my head. But when the door clicked behind me, the lock sounded wrong, deliberate, as if it wanted to stay that way. The hum of the vending machine filled the silence. Then, underneath it, faint music, coming from my room. Except I'd turned everything off. She'd stood close when we said goodnight, too close. Our shoulders almost touched. Her perfume still followed me down the corridor, clean and recent, the kind that lingers on skin more than fabric. Neon from the sign outside painted her doorframe red, cutting her silhouette into memory. I told myself to keep walking, but the air felt heavier where she'd stood, like the hallway was holding its breath for something that hadn't finished happening. I reached for my collar out of habit, trying to smooth the crease she'd left when she tugged it playfully. My fingers brushed the warm fabric, just enough to feel that ghost of pressure again. Something about that simple act, adjusting, remembering, made the air hum. Down the hall, a door opened a crack. Not hers. A sliver of light fell across the carpet, and I heard my name, soft, like a rehearsal of a secret. It came from the wrong direction. Then again closer. A whisper that didn't need distance. Her voice, but lower, like it had traveled through someone else before reaching me. The syllables brushed my ear, warm and patient, ending too near my skin. I turned fast, expecting to see her. The hallway stretched both ways, empty, except at the far end where she stood again, framed by red light. Same stillness. Same smile. I told myself maybe there was a mirror at the far end reflecting her. Old motels have strange angles, warped glass, sounds that fold back on themselves. I took a few steps toward the elevator just to prove the floor was real. The hum underfoot felt like a quiet engine. But when I glanced back, she was closer, half the distance, still watching, head tilted slightly, like she'd been waiting for me to notice the change. I didn't remember her moving. I stopped near a vending table by the ice machine. Something brushed my knee under the edge, soft fabric like the corner of a skirt. The touch stayed there, unmoving, then withdrew as if testing whether I'd follow. I didn't breathe for a second. When I leaned down, the space was empty, just my own reflection staring back from the chrome panel. But the smell of her perfume hung there, stubborn, as if someone invisible had just leaned in too close. A draft slipped through the hallway vents, cold against my neck. Instinctively, I brushed at my shoulder and felt a strand of hair that wasn't mine. It clung there, dark and fine, catching the neon light before sliding away. For a second, my skin prickled like someone had just tucked it behind my ear. I turned to the nearest mirror panel, half expecting to see her reflection behind me. Only my own, breathing too fast, eyes too wide. The music from my room had stopped. What replaced it was worse, a kind of breathing that didn't match mine. I stood still, listening, counting each inhale until I realized there were two rhythms now. One faint, one right behind me. The corridor felt smaller, air thick with heat and perfume. Neither of us spoke. The silence wanted to see what I'd do next. I backed toward my door, hand on the keycard just to feel something solid. That's when I heard her again, softly calling my name, from both ends of the corridor. The voices met somewhere in the middle, layering like an echo that couldn't decide where to begin. I whispered her name back, but the sound didn't belong to me anymore. It felt borrowed, like my mouth had learned her cadence too well. Then something slid against the carpet near my feet. A second keycard. Glowed faintly in the neon spill, edges damp with condensation. When I bent to pick it up, my fingertips met warmth, as if another hand had just been there, leaving its shape behind. I still had my own card in my pocket. So whose was this one? And why did it smell like her perfume, newer, closer, freshly pressed against my skin? I slid the duplicate card into the lock. The reader blinked green, then red, then green again, like it couldn't make up its mind. A breath warmed the side of my neck, slow and deliberate. She was near enough that the air moved when she spoke. Only the words didn't make sense. Half my name, half a sound, fading into a whisper that came from behind the door instead. I turned the handle and saw myself on the other side, holding the same card, the same expression, waiting. By morning, there was just one card on the carpet. The music had stopped again, but the air still carried her scent, clean, new, impossible to trace. I stood there for a long time, unsure which room had been mine. The door closed by itself, slow, careful, like a secret being rewritten. Sometimes, when the lights hum just right, I swear I still hear her whisper my name from both ends of the hall. Would you open that door?